On every episode, you hear me talk about this notorious stress bubble, these 20 years of your life that will define your parenting, your marriage, your career, good, bad, or ugly. Find out what I mean by the stress bubble on today's episode. Men in the Arena Army, we salute you. Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the Men in the Arena podcast. I'm Jim Ramos, your guide and host of Spotify's #1 podcast for Christian men, guiding you in and through the stress bubble of life and towards your best version. Hey, I want to jump into the meat of this podcast. We talk a lot to you about the stress bubble. And I realized it's been a while since we've actually defined what the stress bubble is. So I want to talk to you about this stress bubble. And here are some key ingredients to the stress bubble. Being married with children in the home. Those are two non-negotiables to being in the stress bubble. So if you are married without children, or you are not married with children who are not living with you in your home full time, you are not fully engaged in the stress bubble. So I'm talking prerequisites for the stress bubble to be fully engaged are married with children in the home. So I know that you may feel stressed out at times, even though you may not be married or your children may not be in the home with you. But unless you have children in the home and you are married, in my opinion, you are not fully engaged in the stress bubble, even though you may be stressed out. For example, my sons are out of the house. It's just me and my wife now, and we are in a fully engaged, full life that is busy, that is full of energy and full of vitality and full of commitments and responsibilities. But we have put those stress bubble days behind us, and there is an exhale of relief, I guess, or freedom to do different things. So when we talk about the stress bubble, here are some signs that you may be in the stress bubble. I've already told you you're married and you have children. Here are some other signs. You have a full-time job. Also, another thing is you're acquiring pets in the home. You have a rent or a mortgage that you're responsible for. And the other thing is that you're in the stress bubble of life when there is now an expectation by outside sources for you to volunteer. Whether it's in your church, whether it's with your kids' soccer program or your kids' music department, or in your school, there's this expectation that's always kind of floating that you are required or needed to volunteer. So those are the things I think really help you understand what the stress bubble looks like. So when I think of the stress bubble, there's no better illustration than this balloon. Now, for those of you listening to this podcast audibly and not on YouTube, we're going to provide a link in the show notes. You can link up to the YouTube episode so you can see what I'm doing here. So I've got a balloon in my hand. I'm blowing it up. So now I'm holding a balloon that it's filled, I would say, to 70% capacity. So when I look at a man in the stress bubble, the man is very similar to this balloon. In other words, there's a couple things that make you similar to this illustration. You are compelled, not forced, to enlarge your capacity. In other words, these sources around you, your marriage, your children, your pets, your mortgage or rent, your full-time job, these are, the expectation for you to volunteer. These are things that are forcing you, they're compelling you by your choice mostly to increase your capacity for a season that'll last, I would say, at least 20 years. The other thing is the only way that this capacity can expand is if the internal pressure increases. So if I let air out, I decrease the pressure. Let's say you have 3 kids and you have another kid, your 4th kid increases the pressure. So every time you add something to the stress bubble, there's an increased internal pressure. By internal pressure, I'm saying the pressure inside of you to grow to your best version, to maximize your capacity in the stress bubble. The third thing is you are spread thinner. This rubber balloon, the bigger it gets, the thinner the outer layer becomes. And I know a lot of you guys, I remember in Lord of the Rings, there's a scene where Bilbo says, I feel like a piece of butter spread too thinly on bread. And he was getting older and he was losing his edge. And I think in the stress bubble, we feel like that too. We feel the capacity increase and we feel the thinness of what we have left to give. So you are spread thinner in the stress bubble. The next one is you are spread beyond normal. So that, in the stress bubble, you expand and you're stretched beyond what you are used to. You went from a 22-year-old partying college student to now a guy who's giving your life to Jesus. You're married, you've got a couple kids, you're trying to do the right thing, and you are stretched beyond what you've ever experienced in your life. And maybe for the first time in your life, you're going, man, my dad wasn't the idiot. Mark Twain is quoted as saying this, man, my dad wasn't the idiot I thought he was when I was younger. And then the last thing is, in this phase, when you're in the stress bubble, and I know this is going to impact some of you deeply, in the stress bubble, 4 things will happen, guys. If this bubble were filled with helium, it would rise. And a lot of guys in the stress bubble, man, this is where you test your mettle. You rise to the occasion. And a lot of guys will rise head and shoulders above the rest. And that's our purpose for men in the arena. It's to call you out of the anonymous bleachers and to rise above the norm and to rise above the majority, to stand head and shoulders above the rest, because God has called you to be the hero in your story, and for the glory of Jesus you've accepted. The second thing is this: some of you in the stress bubble, man, you're going to hold your own. You're going to be a solid father, a solid husband. I mean, you're not going to become this you're not going to be a one percenter, but man, you're going to be engaged. You're going to be there. You're going to be better than the absent dad. You're going to be better than the dad who's physically there but not emotionally present. And you're going to be a guy that holds your own. The other thing I see a lot in the stress bubble, you see these guys deflate. They just slowly deflate. And over time, they lose their capacity and they just don't have the staying power. And these are guys that maybe they started off as great dads, great husbands, and they just kind of deflated and they lost their capacity and they went flat. The fourth guy, is the guy who let the pressure get to him and he imploded. And man, we see this all the time. These guys start off great and they just they don't have a slow deflating over time. They have a complete explosion. Everything around them is a disaster. There's a wake of tragedy and woundedness all around them. And this is the kind of guy we don't want. We don't want you to be the guy that deflates over time. We don't want you to be the guy that implodes because you can't handle the pressure. Man, we want you guys to hold your own, even more so to stand above the rest, to become your best version and become the hero in your story, and to pass on a lasting legacy of love, of serving the Lord, of a marriage that lasts a lifetime. Guys, we are here to help you. And I want to say this: the best way that we have found to help you is not this podcast. This is one of the great ways, but the best way that we have found that helps men long-term is to get into a group, to join what we call a team. So if you go to our homepage and you click on the Join Our Program button, we have a full-time staff. His whole job is to start hundreds and thousands of teams all around this world of men meeting together in local teams face-to-face, in virtual teams, on military bases, in fire departments, at police stations, in nations that maybe can't afford our material, so we give it to them for free. Maybe you're a pastor in another country. We just want you to start teams all around the world. We believe that when men get it, they get into a small group. So guys, click that Join Our Program button. We want to help you be the best version in that stress bubble of life and beyond. Guys, if this podcast has impacted you in any way, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps us to go up in the charts and to help reach more men for Jesus. So guys, until next time, feel the wet sound on the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game, get dirty, grind it out, and be a man.